My name is Casey Galvanek, my coach, Sarasota crew, Sarasota, Florida. And we are a relatively small team, and I have a really poor sense. Pretty big program, grew from fluctuating size of a program over the years before I got there. But when I got there, pretty small program. Now we're like the largest youth program in the country or something like that. 361 is our count.
What was that, Dave?
361 is our count for middle school and high school. We have 178 middle schoolers, which is probably larger than most people's high school programs. A lot of fun. We're not too strict, but what I wanted to talk about, or what Chris wanted me to discuss, was the pains and gains of growing a program. And there were a lot of pains, Randy was here. Randy Heigl was with the program when it started, and he has witnessed it as well. I mean, sometimes you make decisions that some people agree with, and you hope that it's the majority. It's not always the case, and try to get a direction, get everybody to agree on a direction, and then fill in the gaps as needed. So I'd like to start off with almost every problem. I think there are problems in this world, so I try to address problems. I try to ask a lot of questions, right? The whys, the hows, that kind of stuff. And that's what you should be doing if you care about growing your program. Again, so ask some questions, right? Culture. And again, I want to say this, that there are a lot of different programs out there. Like if you're a school program, you have an athletic director, you probably are beholden to their idea. Like, we want to win medals so we can get recognized. So if you have a question, a lot of my discussion will be based on running a club or a small business, right? And how we suffered through our transition. Now, if you are, university program, then it's different. Meeting those goals and matching your culture and all the desired effects is another important approach. So culture is a big thing. Culture in the program, and I will talk about how I address the problems or the ideas and answer the questions in our program. Culture, when I came in, we changed the culture. Right? So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. The mission of the team was defined before I got there. We altered it. The board had a certain reason for being, changed that. Parents had a certain role in the program, changed that. Communication, pretty poor, I think we improved it. Accountability and staffing, changed that drastically. And we redefined success in our program. Right? And then again, equipment came along with it. And the facilities have changed. All right, so, let me get back to this. All right, so those questions, I think, are the key questions that you have to answer. All right? I'm sure there's a million other ones that you'll ask, like, do you practice on Wednesdays? Or when it rains, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into making a successful program. But remember, all of these are some pretty area. And I was described as being a drill sergeant when I was a younger coach. All right? And I remember one day when the novice girls I think I had to coach them because their coach was gone. Novice girls came up to our novice boys and said, God, he's just like a drill sergeant. And they said, yeah, but look who's winning, right? So I took that as, it was nice that the kids were really pumped about winning, but then I took it as, wow, I don't really need to be a drill sergeant, but I was also 18 years old, so I didn't know how else to be other than try to get respect by being I've changed that a lot. When I moved to Sarasota, I changed my approach a lot because it's a much different culture or region. The environment is different. Kids are a lot different. It's a beach mentality. So there's quite a bit of differences, and that was me being a student and learning the environment and what I had to do and how I had to modify myself to improve the environment that I was in. Anybody have any questions about that? No? This is awesome. All right, so culture. Evaluate your current culture if one exists, if you haven't started the program already, right? So with our culture, it was a unique experience. We had the program Sarasota Scullers that started all rowing in Sarasota in 1991. At some point, some parents didn't like what was going on, which isn't real hard. One parent, they start to get this wave of emotion and support from other parents. They broke off, started this other program, Sarasota Crew, 11 years later. And what's funny about it is, I wasn't there for a lot of it, but the stories provided to me were that essentially they set up the same program again. Same thing. It wasn't the head coach that was causing the problems anymore. It was the board, some of the members of the board. Right? So it just is funny. Like the bylaws are essentially the same. The practice schedule essentially the same. So it's just people looking for control. So, and the culture was one of got to win medals, got to win trophies, got to be in the newspaper because the other club is in the newspaper winning trophies, this and that, right? So essentially, they're being dragged down the road based on another team's success instead of creating their own culture, right? So create the culture you want, right? Like, are you competitive? Are you recreational? Or is it a combination of both? We are a recreational program. Everything that we do is optional. Every practice, optional. The message is very clear. If you want to be successful, you should probably come to every optional practice. You're not forced to come, but this is a recreational program. And we've had some pretty great success because there are kids, mainly the parents want their kids to be awesome and the next Olympian, which is always a funny story. But we provide those kids what we think is the answer to their goals. Okay, so but we are a recreational program. Now, if you're a competitive program, like makes cuts, that's how I'm going to define competitive program, making cuts. That might not be your definition. It's just a convenient one. Like Connecticut Boat Club, Liz Trump, right? Her model is completely different. She has a limit on numbers, and she makes cuts, and she picks and chooses as well as you can in rowing. It's not like everybody's beating down your door to join, but she makes those decisions. So she has a competitive program. It's that's her business model. It's very successful. So you just have to decide your culture, right? Is it going to be competitive? Is it going to be recreational? Right. So the coaching roles evolve from your definition of your culture. And if that is, yes.
Is her model based on the fact that her facilities are too small to house that many rowers?
Could possibly be.
Okay.
Right. And that's, I think that might be a current thing. I've never discussed it with her. But you can always upgrade facilities. Right. So, I think it also might be, just looking from the outside, she trusts her message, and then as maybe as she hires more people that she trusts with her message, maybe she will do, right? I don't know, but she does what she wants to do and does it very well.
Right.
So that might be enough for her. Maybe she doesn't want to manage. Maybe she does not want to have a lot more people.
Right.
I don't know the number, but 42 kids maybe what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
So with those coaching roles, you hire the coaches. You make sure the coaches also convey promote the culture. If you hire coaches that are drill sergeants, then you're gonna have a militaristic kind of program, and that doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit with recreational, you got the wrong staff. You're not gonna help grow your program, right? So all these things need to align. They need to mesh. All right, coaches' roles. Are they teaching just rowing, or are they mentors? I like to think our program, we're mentors. Teaching rowing is just our way to convey how to be like good people. Right? This weekend alone, this is like, these are the exciting things for me. 4 or 5 coaches have come up to me with kids that have graduated and been lucky enough to go on to row in college, whether it's club or like Division I or something. But the best one is a club coach came up to me and said, you know, this kid that rowed for us or rows for us now is tremendous. He's not just a good rower, he understands the sport of rowing, but he is a great teammate and a great kid, young adult. And that message is our culture, right? That's what I like. If somebody said, oh yeah, thanks for sending us the fastest rower we ever had, that would be nice, but then what about all the other stuff? Is he a pain in the ass or she a pain in the ass? Are they doing drugs, drinking, getting arrested? Any of those? That's not good. So we want to make sure that we are sending the right message. All right, so when you define your culture, the pushback, which I received a lot of, tons of, is that, are you willing to fight for it? Right? This is where you will hear me say a lot and openly, it is your job as the head coach, if that's what you are, head coach or the coach representative of the program, to be able to take that pressure from the parents and the board based on your culture. You want to push it forward, you want to define what your team is or your program is going to be, you need to be able to be willing to take the load, and there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot. If it already exists, if the program exists. If it doesn't exist, you're starting a new program, people will either choose your program or go to the other program. Like we're in Sarasota, we have 2 programs. If they don't like us, they can go do the other, right? If they don't like that, they come to us. It's very simple. It's actually very nice to have 2 programs. I am more excited when we are disparate, because then it gives somebody an actual option, right? If we're to do the exact same thing, then we're really not giving people options. So. Anybody have any questions about culture? Defining culture? Is it too general? You want more specifics?
I'm just wondering a little bit how you articulate that culture. I mean, obviously in your case it was a change, so will you communicate that? I mean, are you writing a mission statement? I mean, or is this just kind of word mouth?
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, it's one of the next slides. So if you want to wait, you could. So, the mission. Right. So, what does your program stand for? This is the mission statement, right? Lo and behold, when I got there to Sarasota Crew, there was a mission statement. It was on the website. It's very easy, right? I worked very hard trying to change things in what I thought was a positive manner, move things forward. I spent a lot of time writing down nobody could ever tell me what we did, 25 words or less, outside of rowing, right? But for me, I think I have a responsibility, or youth coaches have a responsibility to teach more than just rowing. Whether that's true or you believe it, if you're teaching thugs and you don't care, then just keep teaching thugs, I guess. But we're about youth development. So I spent a lot of time figuring out what I wanted the kids that came through our program to stand for and represent in 25 words or less, right? So whether the board accepted it or not, that wasn't a public-facing comment, right? It was just what I wanted the board to know where I was coming from, right? And we still stand by. I think we might have modified the mission statement, a few words here and there. The current one that's on the website, it's buried somewhere, you know. But it's about development, youth development, right? Not, it kind of alludes to, and this is the influence of there being a second program in town, competition, right? That's what happens, right? Parents, you know, parents want to see, oh, this is a competitive sport, I want competition. Are they going to provide my kids with a level of improvement over the other options, right? Are we going to be competitive or more competitive? Our competition, like I said, we're recreational. Youth competition is as far down our list as possible. But we do it, and luckily we have some talent walk through our door. So your mission statement should truly align with your culture, right? This will be a recurring theme. All of these things should align because you can easily be at odds. When I got to Sarasota Crew, their mission statement said, we want to develop great kids into brilliant, lovable people. I'm making this up, exaggerating it. But all their mission was, we don't care what event we row in, we got to win it. That's all we care about. Win, win, win. Those two are at odds, right? So I said, I don't care about winning. We changed the culture, changed the mission, or realigned, I think, realigned with the mission, and we became more successful. There was good talk in the town. You know, it was like one of my most proud moments was a parent said, you know, you should go row at Sarasota Crew. Casey does what is best for the kid, not what's best for you, the parent. And I thought to myself, that's exactly why I don't care about parents. Never have, never will. Right? We're a youth rowing program, have some masters, you know, but that's what we care about, the kids, making sure the mission is the kids. It's all about the kids. So that was probably one of my most cherished moments when somebody in the community, of which I didn't know and didn't know they knew me, made that comment to another family. And I thought, well, that's success right there. Right? So, our mission now aligns with our culture. Right? Making sure your mission statement is complete. When you do that, it'll help you answer the rest of the questions. It really will. Because no matter how hard you fight it, competition is going to be there, but your mission statement's got to be right, and you've got to follow up. If you don't follow up, you will not grow. People will be confused. The message that gets out, gets communicated, will be muddled. One parent or one pipeline to your community will say one thing, the other will say a different thing, and then nobody knows what you really stand for. All right? So the mission and the culture truly establish and help answer every other question. You have to make sure that they align. People have to know what it is. And it's really about, that really is your sales pitch. Right? People in the community, like if they go to Walmart instead of Target, I don't know, that's not, Publix instead of Whole Foods, that's not even good either. You can choose to go where you want, right? And if you're going to go somewhere that answers your questions in the way you like it. If you don't like to self-checkout, then you're not going to go somewhere that only has self-checkout, right? It's as simple as that. Little things. And if somebody doesn't know or hears 15 different stories about your program or what your direction is, they're probably going to be confused and go somewhere else. So that's going to be a real pain, right? Go back to the title, Pains and Gain. Right? The best way is to make sure that they align. And stand behind it. Right? I've suspended kids from the team. I've done, I crack down on discipline more than anything else. I mean, make sure that we are in line. I communicate with the kids. I stop it. Then make sure that the parents and the kids understand where we're coming from. We had a discipline thing the other day, a couple weeks ago. Anyway, so anybody have any questions about that?
Would you approach anything different if you were the only game in town?
Would I approach it differently? Anything differently? Yeah, we probably wouldn't have to, both clubs wouldn't have to waste so much money on advertising.
Is it Baltimore, there's only one game in town?
No, I mean, it really is, I think one game in town makes you lazy unless you really want to be active, right? Because people just come to you if they want to row. I think having two clubs in town makes both of us better because we have to make sure our message is clear, right? Make sure that we're selling what we want. It makes it a lot better, a lot more competitive. Would I do things differently? You know what? I don't think I would change it now knowing that, because we have fought very hard, and my message to the board and the administrators and everybody else on staff has been, I don't care what else is going on. We need to make sure our message is clear, right? So, no, I wouldn't. Would I have when I first got here? Definitely. We would definitely not spend as much money on advertising, but now, certainly I would. It's important because, as we all know, rowing is not a premier sport, especially in the South. You know, football, basketball, baseball, and you could probably list a few more in there that are above anybody's desire to join the sport of rowing. So, getting out there, we have been lucky. Sarasota, and this is even Manatee, all the programs in town have been lucky enough with this Benderson project. You know, everybody thinks that if you ask, I mean, Randy, you get the question, is that where you train? You know, is that your program? I mean, everybody asks me, is that your home course? No, we have nothing to do with that. Actually, it's kind of a problem for us. I've always feared that they would start a program out there and it would be the new shiny building with the boathouse, and then all of a sudden all our kids with all the, you know, wealthy families would go swarm there. And then we'd have Scullers, us, Manatee, we'd all be these small little programs, and we'd have, you know, it's just like schools, right? When they tried to shrink the school size, all their teams became less competitive, right? So that's a problem for a lot of parents. Less competitive, you know, kids, there are certain kids that want to compete. You probably see what happens in the Northwest where they had to make the rules on you can't change from program to program because they're trying to make super clubs, right? But I like the reason why I like our program is large. It makes me feel like we're doing a good job, and the community recognizes it, right? Again, our message is competition is last. So I wouldn't change that. I think that's most important. So I think programs that talk about being elite shrink, because the message has always been, how can I make the fastest whatever boat, right? And if I happen to have two really fast kids on my team this year, well, guess what? The double's probably your premier boat. Well, then everybody else is afterthoughts. Well, once the families feel that and see that it's only about who is genetically gifted, then you start to lose the attention of the community, right? So, but if that is your mission, right, is to only be a place where the top athletes in the area train, IMG, right? We have this thing in Florida. Does everybody know what IMG is? I think it started with Bollettieri Tennis Academy, right? So they have a football team too now. So people fly in from all over the world, train there, right? And I think it's like $60,000 a year, and then if you have a tennis coach or whatever coach, a lineman coach for football, you pay extra to do that. So if you're going to do that, you know, like Connell Groom in Seattle Rowing Center, you know, he is a for-profit business run by him and Carol, and that's their model. You want to be the best? Well, you come here and we'll focus on you, right? One at a time. And he gets great business that way. That's his model. So, you know, again, mission, culture, it's your business model, right? Would I change it? No. I like showing up places and seeing 6 busloads of kids get off. They're all about that tall, with the shirts that are down to their knees, you know, and they're having a great time. I love it. And I'm glad rowing is that for them, you know. So I wouldn't change. Anybody else have any other questions? I'll talk all day about that kind of stuff. So this leads us to the board, and this was a good discussion that we had at the youth symposium a couple weeks ago in Princeton about how to develop your board. There were lots of examples. The example for me was when I was hired, it was pretty exciting. There were board members, 3, that absolutely did not want me. Everybody else was kind of like, it'd be okay, great. And there was like 1 maybe that was really pumped to have me. And so we went through this time where like I constantly battled. I got to the point where I said, I don't need to be here. I don't really need this in my life. So unless you guys change your model and stop micromanaging, I'm out of here. I just will go write code some more. I don't really care. And a couple of them decided, we'd rather have you here. It's good to have you around. So they convinced some of the others to allow it to happen. And I said, the way I want to see it is that I am the CEO or whatever. So we changed the board. Anyway, I'll get back to that later. Sorry, I get sidetracked. So how do you make up your board? What's the makeup, right? Is it a parental board? Is it the community at large? Or is it the rowing community? In Sarasota, for us, there isn't too much of a rowing community. And what I mean by rowing community is there aren't a lot of ex-Olympians hanging around in Sarasota, right? So like Oakland Strokes, this is one of the the lead example for how to make up a board. They have a 2-tiered board, one board that does control most of the decisions. They're made up of ex-Olympians, rowers. So they have this great bunch of people that know what they're talking about, and they leverage their influence on the program. Right? Community at large, that's not exact. Ours is kind of like that now, but ours was parental. So everybody, Randy, almost everybody on the board was a parent then? Well, you were coaching. So pretty much everybody on the board was a parent. I'm pretty sure. So, well, close enough, right? We had a 15-person board, and or maybe it was 12 then, and they grew it to 15. But that was a pretty good board. It really was. But what we asked to do is they decided after a while they wanted to get community help, like people that were on large foundations, because they wanted to get access to those funds. Never worked out. We never got, I don't think I've ever seen a check come through our place for $10,000 ever. So when we started up, they got a lot of funds, or when they started up in 2002, some of the foundations helped them out, got some money. But the board makeup is very important. I personally think the board should be, and this is where we went, should be your fundraising arm. They should be the ones providing the coaching staff with everything the coaching staff needs to make a successful program for the kids, or for the community, right? That's the most important part, right? Their role at Sarasota Crew changed from a micromanaging, we're going to tell the coaches what regattas to go to, we're going to tell the coaches what to do when practice is, we're going to tell them pretty much everything, to, they made a conscious decision, they're going to, and voted on it, raise money, make sure that the budget can be met. And that was probably the single best decision that was made by the board since I've been there. We went from a very minuscule budget to a very large budget now. We went from a very small program, which I will say, I drove some kids away myself. I wasn't at fault. I mean, I was at fault for some of it, but a very large program, and that change happened. And when I said, "This is what we need to be successful," gave it to them. Said, "Hey, I'm willing to put my job on the line and what I do. This is what a responsible, just take it to business, responsible businessman or business person does. You hire a CEO, they're responsible for it, right? You don't like what the CEO is doing, fire the CEO, right? Kind of agree? I don't see a lot of coaches putting themselves on the line. I see a lot of coaches saying, I'm a good coach. When they come through, I teach them good technique. And how come, in Florida we have, how come, let's change regattas to fit my mold, right? Or how lazy I am. So regattas should be made to fit my needs because I don't really want to get out there and be really energized and do my job really well. Okay, so the board should be convinced. And I have a good example. I got a good one since Justin's here. There was word because, bring up a sore subject, a family moved from Orlando to row for us from their program, right? The board, I heard this through the grapevine because it could all be wrong. We were no longer allowed to go to races like do duels and things together, right? And that was a board decision. A couple people on the board were very pissed. That hurt both of our programs. We could have been a lot more competitive had the board stayed out and said, yeah, you guys can get on a bus and go to some lake and race each other. Two of the fastest programs in the state. You should probably compete against one another. It'll only be beneficial. Here's where the board oversteps into the role of the coach, right? Making those decisions. And every coach is saying, it would be really smart if we could go race them, right? I mean, even if it was two pairs racing each other, it wouldn't have happened, right? So this is micromanaged fundraising, right? Those are the two general roles I see with boards. And I'll tell you, I fought for 3 hard years from 2009 to 2011, where it was terrible every day. Fights with the board, fights with the board, fights with the board, to get what I wanted. And it ended up being, Corso calls it carte blanche. I didn't really have the ability to do whatever I wanted. The board was still there to make sure that I didn't make stupid decisions that drove the team into the ground. And I had to present to the board why I wanted to do things and how we were going to solve problems that I presented. So, but the board was willing to say, okay, here's somebody that knows something. We hired well, and that was the turning point, right? Convincing them to fit a role that was more supportive, but also providing them a solution that they hadn't seemed to feel comfortable with in a head coach they had previous. So this is the head coach as C something O, right? I don't care if it's the CEO, COO, CSMO, whatever it is, the head coach needs to be that part, fill a role that is the director that makes decisions, presents them to the board, because there is board oversight. But depending on your makeup, right, if we're parental makeup, which probably most of your boards are, right, it's probably full of a bunch of type A personalities that are probably rich or got ahead in life by making decisions. So all they want to do is continue to make decisions. And your approach has to be that you convince them. I used a couple weeks ago, I used the term manipulate. Right? Go back to when I became head coach. there was a lot of manipulation happening behind the scenes by board members that didn't want me to be the head coach. Right? So, and I am not a political person. I am a very blunt instrument. I hit things like a club. All right? So I did not handle it very well. I did not get ahead as well as I could have at the beginning, because I sat there and said, well, this is the way it should be. And all the manipulation happened around in the background, and it became a tougher and tougher fight. When I got off my own ass and started to be smart about it, things became so much easier. Right? Find your allies, make sure that you are subtle, and that you, there's better words, but I like it, manipulate the board in the direction you need it to go. Right? It's important. These are parents looking out for their kids. My message to those parents was that if you're going to sit on our board, you have to act like you don't have a kid in the program. Why? Because you're going to try to direct the program that best suits your kid's success, right? And that leaves out everybody else. Because if your idea of success, no matter if it aligns with our program or not, is your kid being in the first boat, if that's the single or the eight, well then you're going to be manipulative and try to make that happen. You're going to say bad things about kids that are above your kid. You're going to do all these things. So get out of the business of trying to do what's best for what you think is best for your kid at this program. So that's developing the board. Anybody have any questions? It's pretty mean, right? Mean-spirited. So parents, we have parental involvement. They volunteer for committees and food committees and putting up the food tent and driving a trailer or doing anything like lost and found or whatever. Usually it stems from a parent in their own personal disgust with how something is run, right? So they get involved. And sometimes it's the right person, and sometimes it's the wrong person. Sometimes that person, you're trying to give them a task that keeps them busy. So they leave you alone, right? What we saw with the increase in our numbers is that our volunteerism went through the floor, like zero. It is the toughest thing to get anybody to volunteer for anything at this point. And it's because of the mentality of a large group. They think someone else is going to do it. Right? So working on how to overcome that is very difficult. It's proven a large challenge for us. And what we have done is come up with, this existed before with us, but they had a list of like 10 or 15 committees. Sign up if you want to be on a committee. Well, everybody looks at that and is just afraid, right? Our biggest one is the food committee. So if you thought when we go to a regatta, you're like, oh yeah, I want to prepare food, and then you go, holy crap, all the kids are going, right? So every parent is afraid of the food committee now. When I first started, I can't remember the numbers when I first started, but there were two ladies that just, their kids grew up together, and they did everything. They would go to the store, buy whole chickens, sit in their kitchen and literally pick the meat off the chicken, right, to make barbecue or fajitas or whatever. But that's what they enjoyed doing, spending time together, so they just kept busy, right? That was great. The food was the best ever. Kids loved everything. Those two ladies were absolutely incredible. Well, when the numbers started going up, kind of professionalized it. The guy that runs a restaurant he was a parent, he started getting in the mix. But then the numbers kept going up, and even he was overwhelmed. So we professionalized it. Now all we ask is that parents sign up to set up the tables and stuff, right? So we have solved our volunteerism problem with professionalizing a lot of our services. And that's something that you'll have to, if you do grow, something you'll have to look out for.
Now,
Yes.
how do you factor that into your costs, or is the cost spread because the program's grown?
Well, our costs have gone down, right?
Because you have so
Because
many
we have a
people.
lot, so, it's easy, the math or whatever, but with our regattas, you know, we say, okay, if we're going to state championships, our entry fees are, I don't know, $3,000 or something for us. And then food, we prepare food, breakfast, lunch, and second lunch or dinner if they're staying out there for the team, right? So lunch prepared costs us $5. We've always had these budgets. Well, when we professionalized it, there were a lot of providers in town that were like, oh, we can meet those numbers. So it didn't cost us any more to go professional around. And it actually made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
So that was, that's how we dealt with that. It's just, you know, it costs, and we go to states, right, we can race once, $3,000. Say we have about 165 kids participate in states, and then we divide that, whatever that cost is, so it costs them that much.
How long do you keep, or do you ask people to volunteer for?
Well, we set up this kind of cool program, and we have this thing in town, I think it's called Cotillion or something, right? It's probably all over the place. But they have this system where they have a past president or past committee person, the current, and somebody that they're going to bring on in the future year, right? So their roles, if they're in the food committee, there's last year's that helps, but doesn't do the legwork, right? I'm just using this as an example. Current, that does all the legwork, and then the shadow, who is hopefully taking it on next year or the year after. We don't say do this for 3 years. We don't say, most of the time, I would say parents do it as long as their kid is involved. And then, I mean, we have people who would quit too, you know, so, but the parents seem to stay on even if their kids do quit. Even parents that don't like me have stayed on to do their job in the middle of the season when their kid has quit. So, I mean, there's a lot, I give a lot of respect to those people that do hang out. And then, there's like our board 2-year terms, but now they did vote on this a couple years ago to keep a guy on the board. There's no term limits, which I don't think is good, but, and there are ways to, you know, change it up. But I suggested that no term limits, then for every term they stay on, they should get a higher and higher percentage of the board members voting to keep them, right? Because, you know, that was the solution that I presented. Went over pretty well. But it doesn't matter anyway. As soon as their kids leave, I mean, they're busy with other stuff.
Right. Do you assess for all of your regatta fees,
Yes.
like every single time? Like every single
For our
regatta,
middle
like,
school, no. Our middle school, we
it's just
incorporate it.
individual dues?
Yeah.
So you're constantly chasing 300-something families for checks every regatta?
Yes, we use on our website, PayPal, they click, they add, we get a report. Hey, you haven't paid, are you actually going? Yes, it's a pain in the butt. You know, because that week, we tried to put in entries, right? And then that week, we'll say, oh my God, you didn't tell us that you weren't coming this weekend.
Right.
Now I have to go change the lineups. Now I have to go ask the regatta to open up Regatta Central so I can now change the lineup because you're not going.
Right.
So yeah, we're chasing a lot of stuff.
Did you think about a different model, like just trying to like budget it out and then divide it up?
We have.
Uh-huh.
The problem that will happen, and this is because there is a second team in town, they will say, why? They won't even ask.
Yeah.
$4,500, whatever, $2,500. And they'll go, $2,500. They won't ask why. They won't, you know, we include everything you need in our dues, right? Outside of regatta fees. Like you get a uniform, you get a polo, you get a water bottle, you get a backpack, all the things that we require you to have, you get. So we try to do no hidden fee thing, you know.
Right.
But then the regattas, I mean, it just really depends because our model is, I'd say all the data, probably we have 85% attendance at regattas. That's what we shoot like C, you know, for any reason. Like this weekend is an SAT, you know, so there's always some kid doing something, or there's band, or there's speech and debate, or there's always something. It just is. So it would be, I personally wouldn't like to do it because it makes, all of a sudden, makes everything mandatory, right? All the regattas mandatory. If I say it's $10,000 to row here, that includes every race, including nationals, right?
So we don't want to.
Or we have an
Yeah,
SAT,
yeah.
and then it'll be, well, I can't go to this one and I can't go to that one. Can you deduct that? And then it'll be managing that instead, right? So, we've tried it a lot of different ways, and it just seems that this way, we have an administrator, we'll get to staffing, and they manage that. Yes.
Do you try to utilize the professional expertise of parents, so if somebody's an attorney?
Yes.
you know,
That's a
they-
brilliant question, and I'm sorry I skipped over it. That is important. You know, we have a lawyer, and I think maybe a judge on our boards, you know, and when we have something like, we just bought some property, right? And one of the lawyers is a real estate or, you know, whatever they deal with, real estate attorney. So, lo and behold, she got the work. Imagine that. So yeah, we do. But the biggest thing is making sure that the right people, we run our program not, it would be really nice if we had board members that wrote checks all the time, like really tied in. Sometimes I think that there's an undue influence, and I try to stay out of that kind of stuff because I make enough mistakes for myself, believe me. I don't need somebody else saying, well, you only put this kid in this boat because their parents wrote a $50,000 check, or, you know, so I try to avoid that kind of stuff. And our board, how we select, I mean, it really is, the board has been very nice over the years. Would you be able to work with this person if they were on the board? They'll ask me. And most of the time it's yes, because they probably wouldn't want them on the board anyway, right? So, or they wouldn't get to that stage. So, but it's really, are they going to assist in our support role, right? We've had parents write the board because they didn't like their kid got booted from the 1B, and they don't personally like me, right? So they think that getting on the board, they'll be able to tell me what to do, right? So the board president wrote them a letter and said, I know that you're upset about your kid being removed from the 1B, but being on the board, if you think you're going to be able to change the programming side of things, you're wrong. And that's the last I ever heard from them. So, you know, that was, you know, we get people like that, you know, but, you know, sour grapes. I mean, again, they're doing it because of their kids, you know, their kid. Now, we're doing it because of the whole community, right? That's what we're trying to provide. So that was a good message. It was really great to see the board step up and be supportive. You know, so.
How much time involvement did the board have with you while you were creating this new culture and these new processes and stuff? Is that something that you guys met on like
Yeah.
weekly? Or
So the president that oversaw me being hired, right, he became the treasurer, and another guy from the community, one of the kids' parents, became the president. And I worked with the treasurer because he was the past president, and, very closely. And I talked to him, met with him quite a bit to make sure that we were going the right direction. And then we would go to the president. 5-minute conversation. They really were. Here's the presentation. Thank you. You know, I see why we're going to do it. And there are measurable differences. Like, we're going to hold you to this, right? When I told them, give me 3 years, I said, give me 3 years, and you will see more success than you ever imagined, right? And we defined success. Right? And then they said, okay, but we still have oversight. And then at the end of the 3 years, first compliment ever came out, right? But we worked on it. We spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time trying to get everybody on board. Like, I needed my ideas to be presented to the community, and those board members needed to be able to regurgitate, if they didn't believe it, to the community what I believed. And so, yes, there was a lot of work with the board. Any other questions? Parents, drama management.
Yeah.
I don't spend a minute other than reading the email on anonymous responses or requests or complaints. I'm spending more time now telling you about it than I do it, and that's the message. I don't know how to handle a situation if somebody says, someone sometime said something the other day when this went on. Because I don't know how that environment got created. There's a lot of somethings and something, no details. If somebody says, Casey did this to Johnny, then I can go, oh yeah, well, all right, I know how that came about, and I can have a conversation, and I can say, okay, that caused a problem, then we need to change how we do that approach, right? If it's anonymous, I don't deal with it, and neither should you. Anybody have any questions about that? Just anonymous stuff, and I hear it all the time. Well, we're afraid that there'll be like blowback on my kid. Like she won't make a boat. Like, just because I think you're an idiot doesn't mean that I'm gonna take it out on your kid. And that I say that at parent meetings.
We started because we had a lot of drama, and as a result, we lost a lot of kids, and it was very hard to isolate it. And finally, put it bluntly, we got rid of those families with the board support. And what we started doing is team building, and so that we could get the kids to know one another a little bit. So every season we do team building, and that has helped because and we watch for clicks, and if we see any kind of behavior, if there's any little buzz, we jump on it because it almost destroyed the club. It was really bad. And my attitude is, you don't remember growing up with all this drama.
I say the same thing. I don't remember it, but that's because I'm old. I don't remember much anymore. But I know, I really do know. When I was a kid, I was not a good kid. So I did some bad things. But the kids, what we do, and this goes back to culture, right? So I have worked very hard, and I try not to be a negative person, but I get that way. I try not to be. So one year, team rules. Like we have this document. I'm sure all of you do. Like kids can't do this and can't do that. And I'm sure if we printed it out, it'd probably be a booklet, right? So I said, this is ridiculous. You point out all these things. We have a lot of parents that are lawyers, and I guarantee you they could pick this thing apart. If I had to reprimand a kid because they smoked on the bus, right? Doesn't clearly state that they can't smoke on the bus in whatever it said. I was thinking, wow, we had some pretty good attorneys on our board at the time, and I said, I bet you this one board member could chew this up, spit it out, and make us all look foolish. So I came to one of these conferences. Kevin Sauer at UVA had these 3 team rules. Beautiful. I asked him, can I take them? You articulated them better than I could ever, period. And he said, sure. So I modified them for Sarasota Crew, and there are team rules. Real positive. Don't do anything that wouldn't represent Sarasota Crew in a good light. Right? If you have a problem with somebody, approach them. Right? But that aligns with our culture where the kids are in charge. Right? So we're there to oversee some of the stuff. Our captains and assistant captains are in charge of a lot. And that was actually a Boy Scout model, right? And so one of the presidents of when I was my first 3 years, he was a Boy Scout troop leader. So he asked if we could have more kid involvement. I said, sure, love to. I love giving them responsibility. And then it's, kids listen to the other kids because they want to be those kids. Like, I don't have to be there with my thumb on them. I don't have to, show who's dominant or who's right or wrong all the time. So the kids, we had a disciplinary thing the other day. I told the kids, the captains, I got them together. I said, hey, this happened. You didn't know because you guys were at a regatta and this group of kids was on a bus going home. But you need to handle it. I don't care how you handle it. Come up with something. Come tell me so you get some kind of approval. And sit all the novices down and dole it out. Well, they came up with some funny things, and I said, part of the punishment was erging, and I said, anybody that was in Bill Manning's presentation. I am the same way. I do not use anything that we do for a workout as punishment, because then they start to think it's just all punishment. So they wanted them to erg a bunch of meters and do this and that. And I said, how about this? And so I suggest to the captains and assistant captains, and they said, oh, that's great. So I stood there as the captains presented it to the kids. They presented it very clearly. Gave the opportunity of the kids that caused or did the infraction, and I said, if you stand up and everybody owns up to it right now, you'll be the only ones punished. If you don't, then all of the novices, the entire team is punished. And that's how we handle things. We win, we lose as a team, we work as a team, everybody's responsible for everybody else. You don't just sit. My biggest quote to the kids is, every time we go to a regatta or before the season starts, friends don't let friends do stupid shit, right? That's what I say to them. It's really simple. Don't smoke on a bus. We'll just use that. That's not actually what happened, but it's pretty close. So one person didn't stand up and take credit. Somebody else tried to take credit, and they did not do it, right? So this is somebody trying to be responsible to get everybody to race. In the end, I gave them 1 more minute. I said, if this person doesn't stand up, I have confirmation from 17 other sources that you did this as well. We got 30 seconds, kept saying it. I'm like, I cannot believe you aren't standing up. Wow, this really sucks. You're not going to participate in the regatta this weekend. And then time went by. I said, okay, no novices. It's like 75 kids or 80 kids that don't get to go to a race. We already charged our entry fees, so we lost a lot of money. And because those kids weren't going to pay for the regatta, so I wrote a little letter to the executive committee and said, disciplinary action cost us $2,700 at a minimum. Just letting you know. It's already done, so it doesn't really matter. But I hope you're okay with it. Complete support from the EC. Thank you. Sorry it had to happen, but it was a great lesson for all those kids to learn, right? So it's important to let the kids run things. I think, it's like when halfway through the year I took over, one of the old head coaches, they had a family removed because they were causing a lot of trouble. I haven't done anything like that, mainly because the kids handle each other pretty well. So, anybody have any questions about that kind of stuff? So communication, really simple. I've been told.
Three rules real quick. I've got 2 of them.
Oh, they're on the website. I'd misquote them.
Okay.
They're on the website on our documents section. Sorry that I don't have it. So communication, I'm apparently the world's worst communicator, and that's why our team sucks so bad, right? So I tease. In all of my businesses and all of the jobs I've had, been kind of successful. That is always the number one go-to of when everything else is going right, but somebody doesn't agree with you, that you're a poor communicator, just to let you know. So we communicate via email a lot. I'm sure everybody else does that too. We also text a lot. We use this little thing I wrote, but handouts. We have flyers. I'm sure you all have flyers. We make phone calls. Our board members call new members to welcome them to the team so they feel like they're part of a program, which they should. Our staffing, we have an administrator. We'll get into that later, but through the staffing, they make sure that the communications are in sync. Right? We set up unified responses to make sure that everything is the same. This is what I was talking about. Make sure your culture is right. If you're not communicating it and it's not the same message, then people will become confused. Confusion leads to frustration. Frustration leads to leaving. Right? We're very proactive. I have made a couple mistakes coaching-wise. A couple years ago, I said, say I made two glaring mistakes, and both of them were related to trying to make a practice environment better for the kids, and it didn't allow us to provide the families enough time to make changes to get it done. It was as simple as the weather was terrible, we couldn't get on the water at our site, we wanted to go over at Benderson before states in practice, and I said, you know what, the weather's gonna suck here, we're not gonna get on the water for a whole week before states, let's go to Benderson. Well, of course, you all have it, one family can't stand it, they call all their friends, or they call and say, everybody called me, everybody called me, and this is terrible, you can't do it, right? You shouldn't have done this. Well, I took that, it's poor management on my part, and I don't change my decisions now. I don't make changes to the situation. If I plan out the year, we're gonna be here for Thanksgiving, we're gonna be here for the week before states, we're gonna be here, we deal with it no matter what comes down. I don't change it. So people can plan and people have a strong level of confidence in what we do. Because every time you make changes, people say, they don't know what's going on, right? Even if you do know what's going on, it sends a mixed message. So it's very, very important. Anybody have any questions about communication? No? You should do it as much as you possibly can. Accountability and staffing, all right? So coaches, very important. Your coaches, again, align with, what time is this thing over? They got like 15 minutes or something? All right. So make sure your coaches align with your culture and your mission. It's got to be, the coaches have to be accountable, held accountable to make sure that they are doing exactly what you're doing. I failed in the recent year. I was very fortunate to have fantastic, I've pretty much always had fantastic coaches, assistant coaches. Every year it gets better. I made a decision 3 years ago to hire a certain coach, knowing full well what they would bring, and positives and negatives. We needed to go in a certain direction, and this person was perfect for it. And then what I didn't measure correctly was my ability to round them up towards the end. And it became very tense, right? And it was, this year more so than ever, I've recognized how bad it was or how bad it got, right? So it's very important that you find people in the process that are doing exactly what you want, because it will always be a mixed message, whether it's not executing a drill that you want done the right way or communication to the families. Like, it got to make sure that those people, and then you take proactive steps to make sure that either it's getting done, or they make the changes, or they're out the door. Outside of coaches, you need some directors. When you hire directors, that's when stuff hits the fan, right? So a lot of coaches need to be the directors, I would say, unless you're one of those like Oakland Strokes people. I'll keep picking on Oakland Strokes. They have some people that know about rowing, right? They're influenced. They probably know some good things. It's just if they are too powerful or too influential, then it can be a detriment. So it's got to find that balance. But we hired an executive director recently, and their job is fundraising. That's really what all they're supposed to do. Okay? Mainly to this large land project that we have, fundraise for that. Right? We gave the title of executive director to help access meetings, right, to get in the door. But with that title, as I feared, came, I want to make decisions and run things. So we have to fight that, right? So when you hire staff, right, like accounting, our team admin and accounting, people have access to different pipelines, and I want to get through this. If you hire staff, it needs to be communicated, go back, that didn't just open up a new pipeline for somebody to go around or complain to somebody else about you, all right? Or not go to the right resource, right? So defining the pipelines, right? A lot of clubs have like parent liaisons, right, for coaching influences. That's important that there's a pipeline defined. Now, if you hire somebody else, another position, that doesn't say subvert that process to go over here, right, and have that new pipeline. So communicating, staffing, the accountability of each position needs to be defined. If you don't, it's going to cause you a lot of pain and a lot of wasted man hours.
What comes first, like the chicken or the egg? You know, like you don't have the funds.
Depends on if you believe in creationism or.
We can get back to that later, but you know, like you don't have a lot of money in the bank to go. Okay, I'm gonna pay this. I know I need someone to focus on fundraising, so like we focus on trying to get the parents involved and trying to
Right.
motivate them into fundraising like arm for us. But it's becoming, especially this week, glaringly obvious that we do need someone more full-time to help with the communications and the back office stuff and all of that.
Right.
Like, you have to just say, we are going to pay this person, but like, did you guys start with just one, or did you have all this
Yeah.
set up?
No. I mean, this is a long, tedious process. Like this, I could talk about this for about 5 or 6 more hours.
Yeah.
I'd give you a lot of details on
Okay.
the pains that we went through. Our original budget when I took over, I think, was $289,000 for a year, right? So that's this year's budget is 1.25 million, right? So it's a lot of growth, right? So about 4 years ago, I said, look, I can't do all this. Like, there's a lot of kids coming in, the budget's increasing. I need to have some more coaching staff, and that meant professionalizing a little more, right? Some more people had a little bit better experience. So we increased the budget. The board said, okay, we'll do that for you. We understand. It'll help, you know, with growth and all that stuff. So they increased the salary budget line item. And they said they were sweating. Let me just tell you. They were like, oh my God, we're going to increase 60,000 more, right? I say 60,000 because now that's like, I've done that like 5 times. So, but they sweated and sweated and sweated, and not only did they sweat, that one of the board members was a coach who wanted to coach, and that meant that I was professionalizing, so they were no longer going to be a coach. So there's those stresses, right? And we all have those kind of stresses. So we had a coach that was our team administrator when we were small. She did a tremendous job, and then when we started growing, like, I kept telling the board, we need to find somebody that's full-time because she can't get away from team administrator to get out and go coach. People are keeping her in the office. So day in and day out, she would look at me, like, because she's stuck with dealing with the parent, which had a complaint or something, or praise all the time, right?
Yeah, right.
So she would look at me, and I got, after like the first, probably a year it took, because I'm slow on the uptake. But about a week into it, I just went, okay. And I knew that I had to go take care of her group. You know, it was just, and we had discussed it, you know, like, hey, it's important that you manage those parents. But the next parent meeting, I have to communicate again, because you have to do it about 100 times, that at 3 o'clock, your job there is done, and move on. So after that year, when we hit, I think we were 135 high school kids then. We hit that, and it was like, I went to the board and said, we got to find somebody full-time. So a parent came in, and she was coaching elsewhere over the summer, so we had a substitute come in anyway. Took over in the summer, and then it was great. She took over full-time. She was awesome. Like, just took over the office, organized everything. Communication went through the roof, like positive communication went through the roof. So we professionalized it. And then we professionalized a bookkeeper once that task started bothering the team administrator too much. You know, that's a very part-time job, but we pulled it out of her day. So we gradually professionalized all of those tasks. And it gives everybody opportunity to do what they're hired to do, instead of being pulled 15 directions and then having to now manage your time and wear all your different so we have tried to avoid that. And it's hard because we're Sarasota. I mean, there's no university with a rowing program. I mean, if we were Philly, I could tell everybody that. If we're Philly, I can go down to Boathouse Row and go, hey, who wants to coach?
Yeah.
And there's 200 kids that go, oh, well, I'd like to have some money for food, So it's, it's different. It's a
We
different
have a
environment.
bigger pool than Stewart.
Well, that's true. And again, like, we have a pool, and that's, again, defining your program, right? Like, how, if we were a smaller city, then we probably row different boats. Our focus would be a little different, even though we'd still try to have outreach, right? To answer your question?
Yeah, it is.
Right. You can always ask again later. I just kind of want to get through it. So defining success. And these are important steps, right? So defining success. Success, is that winning, right? If that is what your culture needs to be, then you have to figure out a way to win, right? And by winning, I mean medals or pots or trophies. I always harp on people for being pot hunters, but it's like, that might be your culture. It might be. Then do it. I don't really care. I'll just make fun of you, and what doesn't matter, it's just me, right? Like, all right, so, but winning, is that what you're there for? Like, is that how, if you have an athletic director you're at a university or a private school or something, guess what? I bet you your success is going to be defined that way. It's going to be hard for you to find an athletic director that says, oh yeah, we'll spend $2 million on you, just make sure everybody's having a good time. It's not going to happen. Right? So, or shirts, if you race for shirts. Right? Our success is outreach. Right? That's our metric. I got to help define it, which was exciting. We want to see X amount of the community participate in rowing. So that's what we do, and that's our mission. Is try to get more and more of the community involved. Right? So that's our success. And so the board was kind enough to agree and say, hey, that sounds like a good plan. Doesn't matter if we win or lose. It's good. And like I said, we've been lucky. All right. We're developing proper young adults. Back to the culture and the mission statement. That's what we want. I mean, when this coach came up to me and said that kid is a really great kid, I got a little teary on the inside. I'm such an emotional person. So, but that was awesome. Like and of course you only hear about the good ones. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of kids that came through our program that are floundering and not doing what I tried to help guide them into doing. But it really does take that one story. And that was really cool. Walked in here yesterday, came right up to me, very positive, said it, and I went, wow, all right. And that's a kid that was a problem at our program, right? So that's exciting news, right? One of the kids I thought would be floundering, just being, is cherished at another program. It's fantastic. Equipment. Gonna have to have equipment, right? We transitioned from having to win to being an outreach program, a recreational program. Now, I feel like I masterminded it pretty well because I had a lot of people on the board that saw, as soon as I did this, their kid, like we went solely for the 8s. That's all we cared about because it included more people. I didn't care if we got 18th at states. We were rowing the 8s. That was the message. But there were several families that were quite influential, and they had kids that were very successful. So I gave them an out, right? So we got some story time. Right? So we transitioned, right? And I was hired to be the sculling and technical director, right? So that was a made-up term or a title to make me happy, I guess. I don't really care, but so I started teaching sculling to a place that didn't have sculling, except for one kid, and their family bought him his own single. So we started buying equipment, and by allowing all-stars to scull and win races, I never had any complaints from those families. So even though I was getting my mission done in the background, rowing the eights, if you saw us sculling, like this kid sculling, our top sculler was in a single, hey, that's fine. As long as he's rowing the eight, I don't really care. So I'd always throw him out there for the second race if he could do it. And those parents never once complained. So,
Did you buy the additional boats or?
did I buy them? Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm rich. No, and this is a good story, right? People say, oh, Sarasota Crew's rich. Oh, God, how many times I've heard this. Too rich, right? I scoured the country, literally, drove myself around the country, buying singles. I bought 5 singles for $500 once, right? Just 3 boats had all the parts, 2 boats didn't. Got them back to the site, sanded them all down, repaired the cracks. One was folded in half. Repainted them, put new parts where I needed to have parts, and we had 5 singles that the kids were like, oh wow, this is awesome. And then I found things like that. And then some families would say, look, I want to buy a single for my kid. I said, that's great. And I said, well, what would be great is if you buy that single for your kid, and then when your kid graduates, I can buy it from you or you'll donate it to the program. So, they would buy like a 1991 Van Dusen, they get a deal. And you end up getting a single for $1,400 instead of, something else because they got some value out of it and they didn't mind the write-off, I guess, So I accrued, I think, about the first year, I think I got 18 singles and I spent less than $10,000. So everybody was always saying, oh, you have all these singles. Yeah, well, it was like I lived down at the boathouse, so. But I wanted those kids to have that experience. So we had 16 different makes of singles for a while. And then as sculling has grown, one of the other programs in the state said, well, they wanted to buy some Swifts, but the container was going to come in too late, right? I said, well, I'll tell you what, I will give you a deal. I'll give you 5 pair doubles, 7 singles, and some oars. I'll sell them to you for this much money. It was a fantastic deal. That got all of the disparate stuff out of the boathouse, like wildly disparate stuff. And then I went and, finished up an order of Swifts, right? And then I said, well, if you want Swifts later, I'll sell you my old Swifts, right? So, so you can have them when you want. But I have worked very hard, and there are a lot of coaches that work very hard at this, but that's the important part, getting out there and making sure that you're doing what you can do, putting forth that effort, what I feel is doing your job. And now I can't remember your question, so. Now, what was it again? I did? Sorry, I get sidetracked on story time, so. But I think it's important, like we transitioned, we bought things piece by piece, and then resold them. Some I bought for $500 and sold for $1,000, so we made money. And I just essentially donated my time to the program to get them in that shape. But we had a transitional fleet, right? I had some singles, convinced some parents to buy some singles and doubles, and those all-stars had a place. While I was doing my sleight of hand, I got to do what I wanted over here, right? So got those people on board, and that was pretty important. And now we have a huge fleet. Ridiculously huge fleet. We got 28s, yeah. We had, I think, like 10 or 12 boats when I started. We have 97 boats. We have 40 singles, and that's this is what we need to do. And it's not like we're buying Empokers, so it's to get the kids on the water. Our program is to get people involved. So we have a lot of stuff. Being fiscally responsible, right? This is, a $500 single is going to get a bunch of kids on the water. Yeah, it's not a brand new Empacher, but that brand new Empacher is probably going to get the kid that owns it on the water only, right? We provided at a low cost somebody's ability, or many kids' ability to get on the water. Fiscally responsible. Biting the bullet and going, yeah, I know, it's a Swift, somebody once said to me, we bought this Swift, that's good enough for us, but for you guys, it's probably not good enough. All of our sculling equipment is being transitioned to Swifts. Like, our top kids row those boats. Like, it's not, that to me is being responsible. If I can buy, and I don't work for Swift, if you all think I do. So, but it was, their ad is very clear. You can buy 8 singles or 1 8. You can buy, I could go buy an Empacher, or I could buy 4 club pair doubles, right? I mean, which one? What are we doing here? I got to be responsible for those kids' money and those families' money. Facilities. What do you need? Like, we have this, I think it's maybe 10,000 square feet. I think that's what it measures. Our total place. It's outside. It's got some awesome tarps over top of the boats. And we got a dock last year. That was really exciting. You don't need much. When you were bringing up about CBC, they like to talk about their pad. There's like a building that didn't get built. It's got an elevator shaft in it too. So there's a little bit of danger involved. But you don't need much. I mean, we all want boathouses. We all want, for safety on top of equipment. But you don't need to jump right to spending money on a boathouse. I mean, if you can't get your kids on the water, or your coaches to be able to get in launches, then probably, I don't know, some kind of pride in a boathouse, I guess, probably making ego decisions. I don't know. But what do you need? Maximize your space. Maximize, optimize. When you build your racks, I know you might have space and it might be really awesome to if I only had 3 singles here. Well, tighten it up, make sure 5 fit. Don't think that you are going to, always have enough space or whatever. I can't believe how, there used to be grass where like a little field in the middle of our boats. Well, that's now a boat rack, housing 8 more 8s. Every square inch of where we are, we pack in, rowers are usually like a virus. They'll take over wherever and just spread out. And we did that a little bit, and of course the people got mad at us. You don't want to have those negative things, like the Conservation Foundation that is a partner with us on our property, or we're on their property essentially. I don't want to have conversations with them. I don't want them interacting with the kids, right? So we try to be smart about how we utilize our property. We walk where we're supposed to walk. We try not to leave trash. Again, if you don't own your property, which most of us probably don't, make sure that there isn't another message getting told to your families that are scaring them away, help them shrink, right? Don't be afraid to ask for what you actually need. Don't be afraid to pull heartstrings, right? In Sarasota County, we have this awesome Benderson project, Nathan Benderson Park, and it's Sanka. Well, they're in the newspaper all the time, getting millions of dollars. The county, pretty supportive of rowing because they have this investment. There's a couple counties, I think, whatever, it was Miami-Dade and Tampa, Hillsborough. They're supportive because there's people coming into the area, right, bringing money. The county rebuilt this park, right? Not just that park, but where's your park? What's it called? Blackburn Point. They went and they said, we have adaptive rowers that want to row. We can't access the water. Well, the county said, absolutely, we will. I'm sure it was a little harder than that, but they said absolutely. And they went in there and they spent, I think the budget was like $700,000 or $800,000 to rework the whole park so that not just for the programs that row there, but so they could get teams to come in from out of town, right? So there's an investment. But they were willing to do it. If you ask and you can show them there's a reason for it. I'm sure they went and said, I was not involved in this. I'm sure they went and said, look, we have this many participants in the community that need more proper access. They're probably going to be willing to do it. Don't be afraid to ask.